Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video. I want to have a relatively quick video today talking about the hypostatic union or the hypostatic union and the male genome concerning Jesus and the Nativity in particular. The hypostatic union is this idea that, and it's a bit of a Christian theological term, the idea in Christology that Jesus is fully human as well as fully divine in one sort of ontological state. And this is, I think, generally pretty problematic anyway. I mean, trying to make sense of same but different in terms of the Holy Trinity. How can Jesus be separate from God the Father and the Holy Spirit and yet the same, without making them, different entities and therefore having some kind of polytheism? That's a problem. Okay, so the whole Holy Trinity is a real big problem, and I think the most common position to take these days is Mysterianism, which is to say I don't really understand how it works. I just have faith that it does work. Okay, so that's Holy Trinity. And then we have the hypostatic union, which is this union of existence in Jesus, of Jesus being fully God and fully human at the same time. What does that mean? Well, I'm not sure I can answer that question now in this video because, like the Holy Trinity, I think it's just terminally incoherent. But now let's think about the virgin birth scenario. So you have this, I think, something that emerges out of a poor understanding of how biology works. So in the times, of the writing of the Gospels, you are going to have a lack of knowledge about how reproduction really works, genetically speaking. Of course, you won't have any knowledge of genetics. The understanding of how the whole biology of reproduction took place was woefully inadequate, as I say in my book here, The Nativity, a Critical Examination, as an accurate representation of reality. The Greeks had done some thinking on the subject. The preformationists believed that the father was like the plough and the mother the field. This meant that the seed and all the genetic material was delivered by the father, with the mother merely providing the milieu in which the development took place. And then later on, Aristotle, based on research into animals and recognizing that children could look like more distant relatives, moved the thinking on a little. He believed that the mother provided the material cause whilst the father provided the moving cause. In effect, however, contemporary physiological understanding was fairly limited. Thus, a claim that Jesus as a man came from an immaculate conception raised few eyebrows of surprise, biologically speaking. This idea that this kind of sinless Mary just provided the vehicle with which to conceive Jesus, and that you had some properly coherent sense, supposedly, that Jesus was fully man, doesn't really work with what we know about biology and genetics. Now, you have a virgin conception, and we know that if you're talking about parthenogenesis, the idea that, and this happens in some species where you get a seemingly a sort of virgin birth of some offspring, that happens, somehow in biology. It can happen, but what you get is basically a clone of the parent, because there isn't a second parental set of genes merging with the host, with the mother. If you are to have a parthenogenesis taking place, you will just get a clone of the mother, genetically speaking. Of course, this isn't happening in Mary's case, so there's no point thinking about the science here. But if you're going to dispel the science and what we know about genetics, then you're going to have to get genetics from somewhere. So Jesus's genome has to appear from somewhere. And the only possible explanation is that Jesus' genome is selected magically by God. God creates Jesus as fully man, but is selecting his genetic composition And this calls into question really how fully man Jesus could actually be. So as I continue, if we the result of this is twofold. Either it makes the virgin conception impossible and renders such a claim redundant, or it means that the male genome was magically fused with Mary's egg, or indeed another supernatural egg implanted into Mary to make it a fully workable genetic sequence. If we take the first option, then that leaves us with the idea that the virgin birth is even more likely to be fiction than we have already discussed. The second option, as sort of theistic get-out-of-jail-free card, doesn't make life all the easier for the theist. It implies that the genome came from God in some capacity. This invalidates the claim that Jesus was fully man, since he was clearly half God. If God somehow managed to input purely human male genetic matter, then this prompts a question as to what criteria were used for deciding such a genome. We can already surmise that Jesus is pretty much a perfect example of a man from the Christian point of view. In a realistic sense, it is impossible for a real human being to be that perfect, surely. So how can it be, with a genome selected by God, that Jesus can be hailed as being fully man? Let me refer to Hebrews 2:17. Quote, "Therefore he had to be made like his brethren in all things." Was he like his brethren in all things? "So that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people." Aside from the difficulties with being both fully man and fully God, as is claimed, and the notions that Christians equivocate over the terms man or God or both, we can see that the lack of proper understanding of genetic biology means that a virgin conception presents quite a headache. So how does Jesus really get away with being fully man and fully God if there is a proper virgin conception and virgin birth? I think this presents, it doesn't prove that this didn't happen. It's another problem to add to the mix of all the problems with the nativity accounts as we find them. Of course, the idea that the birth had to be a virgin birth is itself another interesting argument that I'll talk about in the next video. But I think the selection of the male genome here as to who Jesus would be as a incarnate God in human form, or a God incarnate in human form, I think is another nail in the coffin of the rational basis of the nativity story. It's just a nonsense story. Here's another reason why it's nonsense. Anyway, tell me what you think with regard to the male genome, to what you think as far as the coherence of a virgin birth is concerned, with the idea of the hypostatic union. Put your comments down there. Please like, subscribe, click the bell, do all those things, and Merry Christmas, y'all. Question everything, especially yourselves.